Goeiedag, welcome. My name is Amarinske. BTAT is over and I will share with you the wrap up of the books I read during BTAT, finishing off with a short review of the book The Hush, one of my new favorites which I absolutely did not expect, but I think is totally awesome. I started off the readathon with this book, Het Stenen Bruidsbed by Harry Mulisch, which gets a lot of mixed reviews, but definitely is a hype book, which made it count for the Read a Hyped Book Challenge. It's not that big of a book, as you can see, and I get the mixed reviews. I personally really liked it, but I also get why people don't really like it. It's a book telling the story about an American dentist who comes back to Dresden about 15 years after World War II, and he was one of the American pilots bombing the city. And then we get like his story from in that period of time when he was an American pilot, as well as now when he is a dentist. And it was very intriguing to see because it has a lot of philosophical aspects in it. They are philosophizing about things like time, what time means, and if it is really important or not, all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting to read and really weird at times. I'm curious to see if people have read the translation of this book, which would be The Stone Bridal Bed, because it has some typical Dutch use of language which would absolutely not work. I think if it is not translated well, it wouldn't work in English. This goes also for Het Gouden Ei, which I read for the Read a Book in a Day challenge, simply because it is like 80 pages or so. This one is still 240. So we now go on with my short opinions on this book, which is Het Gouden Ei by Tim Krabbe, a Dutch post-World War II classic about a woman and a man who went on holiday to France, I believe, and then she gets kidnapped, and we don't know what happened, he doesn't know what happened, she never got found again, and it has some very, very beautiful Dutch use of language, like sentence structures and stuff that absolutely make Dutch sentences flow and feel like very beautiful writing, although I think I can get why people wouldn't like it. I personally really liked it, although the book was still like a 3.5 stars, because I don't know, it's not the best book I ever read. I think it would make a great mystery movie, and I think that has been done because this thing has been made into a movie at least 2 times, once in Dutch and once in English. The English one was called The Vanishing, and the Dutch one Spoorloos. I have never watched that movie, but I have now read the book. Also, this one was quite hyped by my Dutch teacher as well, when I was still in secondary school. And I think I can get why, because it has some very beautiful use of language in it that absolutely does not work in English, or you have to have a very, very good translator. Because I read from a foreigner who read the book in English some quotes, and I thought, oh my god, those sentences, they are beautiful in Dutch, but they do not at all work in English if you literally translate them, which I think happened, and that was actually a fault of the translator, but it's still made for crappy translation. Then we go on to the next. I think I gave this book 3 stars as well, 3.5 stars. It was actually quite a good book. Die Scanner by Robert and Zontaag. This is a little Dutch, like YA-ish sci-fi I picked up in the train station when I went home from Germany a previous time to read in the train, but turned out I was way too tired. I read only a very little bit of it, and then I read the rest in the readathon, which was about 95% of the book. It is a book about a man who is a book agent, but not the book agent we know today, you know, the person who looks for people who write beautiful books so that those books can get published. No, this person looks for books to buy them, scan them in the internet, but the internet is called das Ultranets, if that is the right, case, I don't know. And then the books get destroyed, because this is a dystopian sci-fi in which they try to get all knowledge on the internet for free, accessible for everyone at any time, whenever they want to be read, and they want all copies of every existing book so that they can scan them in, because there could be useful or intelligent notes next to the book. But you also get the other side of this during the book, in which people who love books say that people who write cannot get compensated in this society anymore for the work they are doing, because all knowledge and all books would be accessible for everyone for free, so nobody can make money out of it. Also, the people are very poor, so they wouldn't be able to pay for it anyways. And what you get deeply in this book is, I have a feeling this has such a 1984 vibe. I haven't even read this book, but I know the concept of Big Brother, and this was a pure sci-fi technological Big Brother kind of happening, and it was so creepy. I could not help but thinking in almost all of the book, why the fuck would you want that to be not private but accessible for everybody at any time whenever they want? Because all the things were put online, from relational sex scenes and stuff until all the bad things, all the good things, and all the things you wonder why people would film it in the first place. And it really lets you think the other dystopians, like 1984 and Animal Farm, that kind of stuff. Maybe Brave New World as well, or Lord of the Flies. All those kinds of books that depict dystopian societies that can actually happen. It was quite creepy and quite strange to read, and how normal the people thought it was even stranger. And the ending was I liked it, but it was also very, very strange. Then, on the final day, I decided to pick up this so I could go on reading 6 books, because I also read an audiobook, The Bands of Mourning Part 1 by Brandon Sanderson, and, well, it was a part 1 of a book. I have not a lot to say of it, but it was a 4-star read. It was really enjoyable, and it was to manage the challenge of reading a book completely outside, where this was a person on the cover. This is a reread from when I was really, really young, Fluisterwater by Miriam Maus. A story about a girl who gets in a scooter accident when she's, I believe, 15 years old, when she and a boy she knows step on a scooter drunk to make a drive of about 500 meters or so to her home so she doesn't have to walk. They get an accident and she gets paralyzed from somewhere in her back and down. And it is her story about how she deals with it for the first couple of weeks, I think. I remember being a lot better than I experience it now, but it is also meant for people more than 10 years younger than me, so it would still be a very nice read for any Dutch person who is younger, because I have the feeling that this is quite a realistic YA-ish book. These were the types of books I would read when I was younger. I did not read a lot of YA, or not for a long time in any case. I think I read this when I was 13 years old, and that's 13, 14 might be the age when I stopped reading those books. to switch to more literary fiction. Now I am rediscovering them because we go into the short review of The Hush, my absolute favorite book that I read during the BookTube-A-Thon, and I got it in a book box that arrived during BookTube-A-Thon. It's a book about a world with a magical system based on music and a boy who illegally taps into the song, which is basically the magical energy in the world, but you have to be trained and licensed to tap into it, and normally people cannot tap into it when they are not trained at all, but our main character can, and the book starts off at his execution day, and then we get a little flashback about what happened the day before, and the story goes on into a heisty thing because they want to break into the conservatorium, which is the place where everybody gets schooled in the song, which is their magical substance, and music with a capital, which is what you can play to make objects have magical abilities, like soothing or healing or relaxing, that kind of stuff. It was really interesting. It was a really, really fun and good read to read. I already enjoyed and was intrigued a lot by the synopsis. We have complex characters with incredibly sad or like angering backstories. We have development of certain characters that is done very, very well. You can understand why all those characters want to do what they want to do, and it even made me think, I'm not sure about what anymore, but also it has some beautiful quotes in here. But there is one thing that made me not give this 5 but 4.5 stars, and that is we have two main characters, Susanna and Chester, and from like the first times their POV is appearing, you will know that they will end up together because that's the way it is supposed to go in these stories. The only point is there is like one short like talking period in which they are supposed to connect a little bit, and except for like the logical people have attractions to one another and you feel that kind of spark, which happens, which is not a problem at all. For one reason or another, they just fall in love with one another when they don't even know one another. They have just seen one another one time. This was such an annoying insta-love, and the worst thing was, I did not even feel a connection between these characters. If there had been like a platonic connection or something, it was fine, but those characters are written as if they don't like one another at all. And they end up together, which was very predictable, very well. You see it coming from like the first time Susanna's POV gets introduced, which is, I think, about like 15 pages into the story. It felt like it was there because it needed to be there. Well, it didn't. The side characters turn out to have like be way more diverse in all their like backstories and how they experience the world, their romantic relationships or familial bonds, that kind of stuff. It was way more believable. You actually got the feeling that there was something between those characters, and not just, well, we are supposed to end up together, so let us end up together and have a romance like in the last 10 or so pages. Start up a romance and kiss one another when we don't even have like a platonic bond. Because I felt like they ended up with one another without a reason. But anywho, The Hush is like a shadow type of world in this book. And it was worked out pretty fine, but you just get thrown in on the execution day. And all the revelations about the world, like what is actually going on, all that stuff, because there is some kind of heist element in it, but also kind of mystery element about the world, because like half of it is not explained until the end of the book, and you are just thrown in with the expectation that, well, you will be able to follow. You are not a stupid person, And then at the end, or like from 2/3 on in the book, I think we get the revelations about what is happening and what was actually going on, what has been going on for centuries, that kind of stuff. Why certain things in the book happen. I'm not going to say a lot about that. And it was very interesting to see why and how, because I did not even expect a lot of those things necessarily as the way they happened. And normally I am not that easily surprised in books. So that made it for me an extra good book. I would definitely recommend it. It's totally a hidden gem. I had never heard of it before I got it in a book box, even though the original was already released in 2015. So if you want to get into YA, because this book got me a love and opened my eyes for how great YA can actually be, if you want to experience that too and you love fantasy with a very different kind of magical system than a lot of books have, I definitely recommend you start reading this one. It's totally worth it. It's quick, it's fun, it has relatable, likable, complex characters and a complex but very understandable world. And I'd say go for it. Go to the library, buy the book, whatever you want to do. It was one of my favorite reads of this year, so I would say this is it for now. This was my review. Thank you for watching and on tot de keer!